Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a topic that sits right at the intersection of corporate ambition and planetary survival. We're talking about corporate sustainability and environmental management systems. We are skipping the buzzwords today, folks. Instead, we're going to examine the actual, academically rigorous frameworks that massive global organizations use to shrink their environmental footprint, all while maximizing their operational efficiency. So, let's get right to it.
Here's a quick look at our agenda. We'll start with the core concepts, move into the ISO 14000 framework, break down Deming's PDCA cycle, look at a real-world application with PepsiCo, and then wrap things up with a summary.
Section 1. Core Concepts. What exactly is an environmental management system?
The absolute key word to focus on here is formal. An environmental management system, or EMS, is absolutely not just some casual corporate promise or a flashy marketing campaign. No, it's a highly structured, planned, and thoroughly documented system. Think of it like a comprehensive procedural manual. It forces an organization to systematically identify exactly where their operations impact the environment, evaluate just how severe that impact is, and then, crucially, take action to reduce it. It literally bakes environmental commitment right into the operational DNA of a company.
So, why would a company actually go through the hassle of adopting this formal system? Well, the objectives are deeply practical. First off, it's about putting hard limits on the overexploitation of natural resources and renewing what we actually use. We're talking quantifiable, measurable reductions in energy usage, water consumption, and waste heading straight to landfills. Strategically speaking, a robust EMS also ensures strict compliance with incredibly complex legal regulations, which, let's be honest, prevents massive, costly penalties down the line. And simultaneously, it builds tremendous goodwill among customers, employees, and stakeholders. It's genuinely a win for the planet and a massive win for the organization's long-term survival.
Section 2. The ISO 14000 Framework, International Standards for Sustainability.
Okay, so to make an EMS actually work on a global scale, we need a universal language, right? And that is exactly what the internationally recognized ISO 14000 series provides. Now, we can easily categorize this whole alphabet soup of standards into two main groups, organization-based and product-based. ISO 14001, that is the heavy hitter. It provides the exact specifications and guidance for setting up the EMS at the organizational level. Then you have ISO 14064, which standardizes exactly how a company quantifies its greenhouse gases. On the flip side, ISO 14040 zooms in on the product itself. It lays out a framework for lifecycle analysis, which basically means evaluating a product's true environmental impact from the moment it's created all the way to its disposal. It really is a beautifully modular system.
Section 3. Deming's PDCA cycle, the engine of continual improvement.
Now we're getting into the actual operational engine of an EMS. It's a continuous loop. Plan, do, check, and act. But I really want you to focus right on the center of this concept, continual improvement. The entire purpose of the cycle is to ensure a company never, ever remains stagnant. With every single rotation of planning, implementing, monitoring, and reviewing, they are essentially ratcheting up their environmental standards. They get better, they get more efficient, and they get greener with every single cycle. It's really quite elegant.
Let's break those four phases down step by step. Step 1 is planning. This means establishing a clear environmental policy, figuring out the legal requirements, and setting hard, quantifiable objectives. Step 2 is implementation, the do phase. This is where the rubber meets the road. You're mobilizing human and financial resources, training your staff, and putting operational controls in place. Step 3 is monitoring and evaluation, the check. This involves incredibly rigorous internal and external audits to make sure the organization is actually doing what it planned to do. And finally, Step 4 is the management review, or the act phase. Leadership sits down and critically analyzes those audit reports. If objectives weren't met, well, why not? And if they were, how can we set the bar even higher for next time? It's a relentless, never-ending pursuit of operational excellence.
Section 4. Real-world application, PepsiCo.
Let's put this theory into practice.
I want you to really think about this for a second. It is one thing to sit around and talk about continuous improvement and ISO standards in a textbook. But how does a massive, multinational corporation, one with global supply chains, huge manufacturing plants, and billions of dollars on the line, how do they actually execute this? Where does the academic theory actually meet corporate reality? Well, let's take a look.
To really grasp the sheer scale of planning required here, just consider Pepsi's Phase 2 entry into India.
This wasn't just about selling a few more beverages. This was a massive, sprawling agricultural and industrial operation. We're talking an overall project bid of 22 crore rupees. That included 1.55 crores dedicated strictly to an agro-research center and another 8 crores for a potato and grain processing unit. And with export targets set at a minimum of 194 crores over 10 years, the environmental footprint they're looking at is just enormous. Their EMS planning phase had to meticulously account for things like agricultural runoff, water usage in the processing plants, and energy consumption across that entire supply chain, literally from day one.
And here is how all that intense planning translates into a very public corporate strategy. Take PepsiCo's Performance with Purpose dashboard for their 2025 goals, for example. This is a picture-perfect, real-world example of the objectives and targets phase of an EMS that we just talked about. Notice how they aren't just putting out a fluffy press release saying they want to be greener. No, they are publishing highly specific, deeply measurable goals regarding water use efficiency, sustainable farming acreage, and product nutrition. This is what an EMS looks like when it's made visible to the world.
But out of all those metrics on that dashboard, this is perhaps the absolute most critical number: 20. PepsiCo set a hard, undeniable target to achieve a greater than or equal to 20% reduction in absolute greenhouse gas emissions across their entire value chain by the year 2030. Now, thinking back to our ISO standards, this directly aligns with that rigorous quantification required by ISO 1464. And here's the kicker. Setting an absolute reduction target means that even if the company grows, even if they produce way more volume, their total emissions still have to go down. That is a massive, complex operational challenge, and it's driven entirely by their EMS.
So what does the implementation and operation phase actually look like on the ground? Well, consider this highly tangible product change, reducing the PET plastic in a single Lipton bottle from 23.5 grams down to 18.6 grams. Now, a 4.9 gram saving might sound tiny, but multiply that by billions of bottles, and the environmental impact is just staggering. Or consider the deliberate shift in their sourcing strategy, illustrated perfectly by their move to pesticide-free mountain spring water beverages in Bhutan, which directly protects local water tables. This is Deming's cycle in action, folks, identifying a core issue, planning a systematic change, and then flawlessly executing it at the product level.
Section 5. Summary. Key takeaways. If you remember only one single thing from our time today, it should be this. An effective EMS is the ultimate bridge. It takes those lofty, sometimes vague corporate ambitions regarding sustainability and forcefully grounds them in strict, undeniable environmental responsibility. Whether you're looking at the specific, rigid guidelines of the ISO 14000 framework or the relentless operational loop of Deming's PDCA cycle, the entire system relies on structured planning, rigorous documentation, and highly measurable actions. It completely removes the guesswork from sustainability.
I want to leave you with a really critical thought straight from our source material today. Reviews must go beyond the stage of compliance and has to think in terms of continual improvements in environmental performance. You see, doing the absolute bare minimum just to avoid a fine, that is not an EMS. That's just basic legal survival. True corporate sustainability requires a relentless, everyday commitment to asking, how can we do better tomorrow than we did today? So the next time you see a massive corporation boasting about being green, I want you to ask yourself, are they just running a slick marketing campaign, or do they actually have the rigorous, documented, continuous operational machinery of an EMS running quietly in the background? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer.